everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive with yours truly.
Glad to be back.
We like to take these deep dives into all sorts of corners of the research world. And today, we're tackling something that honestly can make or break a project, especially these really big, complex, multi-site, medical studies that we all hear so much about.
Yeah.
We're talking about building the budget.
Ooh, the budget.
The budget. And I was thinking about it this morning, what's a good analogy? And the best I could come up with is it's like setting up this giant domino chain, right?
Okay.
You need every single piece to be in just the right place for the whole thing to work.
You don't want them to fall apart, yeah.
You don't want it to fall apart, exactly.
Yeah.
So to guide us through this domino chain of budget building, we're turning to some advice from the experts.
Yes.
The Global Costing Task Force.
These guys, they know what they're talking about.
You really do. I mean, they're like the master budget builders of the research world.
The Jedi Masters of Budgeting.
That's a good one. I like that. So Jedi Masters, right off the bat, they emphasize something really important.
Okay.
It's that budgeting for a complex study, like one of these huge multi-site things, it's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about understanding like the whole intricate dance of how this project's actually going to play out.
It's like choreographing a ballet.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, it is.
With a lot of moving parts.
And maybe some leaping through fire hoops while we're at it.
Yeah, definitely some of those.
But speaking of things that sound a little bit dangerous, the task force uses this phrase, and I love it.
Okay.
They talk about these studies as being like juggling flaming torches.
Oh, yeah. I love that visual.
So much going on, right? So much to keep track of.
Exactly.
So in that analogy, right, what aspects of these studies make them so demanding from like a purely budgeting perspective?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've got all these different sites that are all participating.
Right.
Each of them has their own team, their own equipment, their own way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got like different institutions, different regulations, maybe even different countries sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've got to think about all the data that you're collecting.
Oh my gosh, the data.
And how you're going to analyze it. And then on top of all of that, there are always those unexpected hiccups that pop up along the way.
Oh, there are always hiccups.
Always.
So it really is like this giant puzzle with all these moving pieces, and some of the pieces might be on fire.
Some of them might be on fire, exactly.
So, okay, we're starting to get a sense of just how complex this can be.
Yeah.
And speaking of keeping all those pieces coordinated, the task force really emphasizes something that I think is super important.
What's that?
And that is budget transparency.
Oh, yeah. Transparency is key.
Why is it so crucial, though, in this context?
Well, think about it this way. You know how we always talk about informed consent being so important for patients?
Absolutely.
Well, budget transparency, it's kind of like informed consent for the research sites.
I like that. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's about making sure that everyone involved knows what's going on, what to expect, and they feel like an equal partner in the process.
So no one feels like they're being left in the dark or taken advantage of?
Exactly. Nobody wants to feel like they're joining a band and then later finding out there's no money for drums.
Or that, they're suddenly expected to play the tuba when they signed up to be the lead guitarist.
Exactly.
So transparency, it builds that trust. It prevents those nasty surprises down the line. And ultimately, I think it really helps the whole study run more smoothly.
Absolutely.
So we know transparency is like the key ingredient here. But where do we even begin?
Right.
How do we actually create a well-balanced budget in the first place for one of these, multifaceted projects?
Well, the task force has some really good advice on this. They suggest a super methodical approach. And I think the key is starting with a really detailed breakdown of all the costs involved.
So it's not just like, throwing a dart at a board and seeing what sticks.
No, not at all.
We need to be a little bit more precise.
Much more precise.
So almost like a blueprint for the budget.
Exactly like a blueprint.
Okay, so we break down all the costs, but is there any kind of system or framework?
Yeah, the task force, they actually recommend using standardized templates for this.
Okay, so this is kind of like having that pre-built framework that makes sure we're not overlooking any of those crucial ingredients.
Right. It's like having a recipe where all the ingredients are already measured out for you.
I like that analogy because it also kind of implies that you can, make adjustments as needed.
Exactly.
And speaking of adjustments, in research, especially with these big complex studies, things are always changing.
Always change?
There are always unexpected twists and turns.
Absolutely. So that's where communication comes in.
What?
Really open and honest communication with everyone involved.
So we need to keep all the stakeholders informed.
Exactly. Regular check-ins, updates, and a willingness to adapt the budget as needed.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of situation.
Definitely not.
It's more like tending a garden. Right?
Yeah.
You've got to make adjustments as things grow and change, and sometimes it rains.
Exactly. You got to be prepared for anything.
And sometimes a squirrel runs off with your prized tomato.
That happens too.
So, okay, lots to keep in mind here. But the task force also had one more recommendation that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They suggest involving the sites themselves in the budgeting process from the very beginning.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Right, because it helps build that sense of ownership and collaboration right from the start.
Makes them feel like valued partners.
Exactly.
Rather than just, vendors.
Right, we're all in this together trying to, juggle these flaming torches without setting anything on fire.
Without burning down the house.
But we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think it's worth recapping some of those key takeaways for our listeners.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to budgeting for these complex medical studies, remember transparency is key.
Transparency.
Meticulous planning.
Yeah.
Get that blueprint in place.
Have your recipe ready.
Have your recipe ready, exactly. And then open communication with all the stakeholders involved.
Right. And remember, those sites, they're your partners, not just your vendors.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But I do want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
So we've talked about budget transparency and why it's so important, but how can we take it to that next level?
Yeah.
What are some really innovative ways that we can communicate these financial plans and foster even stronger partnerships within the research community?
That's a great question.
It is a big question and one that I hope we can all continue to ponder. So thank you so much for diving into this with me.
It's been fun.
It has been fun, and we hope you've gained some valuable insights. Until next time.
See you later.
Bye-bye.